Okay, folks, welcome back to Battle for Azeroth. So I wanted to do a State F4 Survival Hunter. I am a newly 110 in my newly acquired Heritage Armor, as you can see. Which, fun fact, I just discovered comes in 3 different variations. They're just slight color variations. One's white, one's black, and one's red. They all look alike. Um, so that was kind of a nice surprise. I wasn't expecting that. I have gotten some where it gave you like a option of wearing like pants or a kilt or something like that, but I hadn't actually seen 3 different color variations before. So that was kind of a nice surprise after trying to grind out levels to get this lately. So. Yeah, so I keep coming back to the same question, which is what are they trying to do with this spec? Because all my melee abilities are range abilities now. And to further drive that point home, Aspect of the Eagle actually makes Raptor Strike, which is arguably my only true melee ability, makes it usable at range. Usable at a 40-yard range. So I don't know how to approach this to know how to talk about it. So I switched over to survival around level 80, I think, somewhere around there. And then mostly was just grinding out Battlegrounds with the experience buff right now. Even if you lose, you still get pretty decent experience. So, yeah, it's a bit different from what I remember when I looked at it during beta for Battle for Azeroth. It definitely, the setup, the play style of it now is a lot different than what I remember. I've made some tweaks here and there from how it was set up originally when I switched over. I swapped Wildfire Bomb out for Serpent Sting. Just swapped their places on the command bar. I had Hydra's Bite, swapped it for Guerrilla Tactics. That seemed to help give me a pretty significant DPS increase. Other than that, most of these talents are the same. As is so often the case, if you've played a class, and then certainly through an expansion, they don't typically change all that much. A lot of these you'll remember. Some of these seem like they're more tailored towards PvE. Butchery, for example, replaces Carve. Chakrams. I kind of played around with chakrams. It seems like it would be good if you were trying to run like old raids or something like that. Just to kind of help deal with trash mobs and things like that. Wildfire Infusion might be the notable exception. Seems like it works a little different than what I remember in beta. I seem to remember it worked something along the lines of like ammo, where you could pick what you wanted and then it would give you like an hour's buff to do just that. Now it replaces Wildfire Infusion and gives you one of 3 different bombs. So the nice thing about this is I have 2 charges with Guerrilla Tactics. And it will apply each of the 3 bombs as its own. So you can actually, it kind of gives you an additional dot instead of just kind of reapplying your same dot. Shrapnel Bomb does causes your Raptor Strike and Cleave to apply a bleed. Pheromone Bomb allows you to basically spam kill command, and then Volet Bomb reacts violently with poison, causing an extra explosion against the target suffering from your Serpent Sting, and refreshes your Serpent Sting. So it lets you spam Serpent Sting, basically. Kind of had to read it a few times when I first switched over because it's worded oddly, I think. So yeah, one gives you a bleed, one lets you spam kill command, and one lets you spam Serpent Sting. Which Serpent Sting just really doesn't do a whole lot. Does initial damage, does bleed damage. I mean, it's certainly worth throwing on if you're running through your rotation, especially if you're trying to take down a healer or a flag carrier or something like that. Otherwise, just really doesn't do very much. Doesn't do anything special. Wildfire Bomb does do AoE damage, so it's about your only AoE ability. Other than that, I kind of just wanting to play around with different talents from my Alliance Hunter. I kind of picked things that worked around Kill Command. It's the only ability that Survival has that generates focus, at least baseline. You can pick up Flanking Strike, which, as I've mentioned before, Mongoose Bite and Flanking Strike used to be baseline when they first redid Survival in the Legion pre-expansion. So Alpha Predator works with Kill Command, Bloodseeker, and Tip of the Spear. Everything else, Guerrilla Tactics, Camouflage, Born to be Wild, do things with your baseline abilities. So, except for Camouflage, which actually gives you the ability. A lot of hunters take this. It's just a nice utility to have. It is a bit weird, but it is a nice ability to have. So it used to be baseline, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. It used to be one of your higher, back when we had more the old-fashioned talent trees, as I seem to remember. It was one of your higher up abilities, I think. It wasn't one you could easily get. So you were quite the hunter if you could get to the point of getting camouflage, especially for PvP. Born to be Wild just reduces the cooldown on all your aspects. So aspect of the eagle, aspect of the cheetah, and aspect of the turtle. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will say, of the various configurations or playstyles that they have had for Survival, this is probably the one I've enjoyed playing the most. It probably kept me motivated enough to get to 110 to get my heritage armor. So Hunter, for whatever reason, is one of those classes I seem to get burnt out on fast. I like playing them. I like the concept and everything. I just, for whatever reason, I get burnt out on playing them fairly quickly. So the other thing I was going to mention, I did play around with some of the pet abilities. I had been running around just kind of killing rares at one point, and I found Cedia, who is a wasp, and the first thing I noticed was she has mortal wounds, which reduces the effectiveness of healing. So I was using her for a while, and she also gives you heroism or bloodlust, whichever side you prefer, which is kind of nice in the form of primal rage. And then I used her for quite a while, and then I was looking at other pets' abilities, and decided to and you can get her, before I forget, from Failwood. Just kind of right by the Whisper Grove flight there. So you can't miss her. The whole area is kind of green. Giant yellow wasp. Can't miss her. And then the other one I got was Fangor, which is just a bat from the undead starting area. So you can get it fairly early on. Let's see, where is the... see if I can find it again, because it's kind of hidden. I thought Glades. Where am I looking for here? There we go, right up here in kind of the mountains. So, yeah. And typically the rares around the starting areas don't have a terribly long timer. I think Cedia had, if I remember correctly, it was like a 4-hour timer. The reason why I went for a bat was he also has Primal Rage. I was trying to stick with something that had Primal Rage. A lot of the others increase movement speed, reduce damage, things like that. Things that aren't terribly overly useful. However, the special ability was Sonic Blast, which removes 1 Enrage and 1 magic effect. So it will put a, it will block out healers healing. You name it. It was different things when I was playing around with it. If you have Recount, you can actually click on it and it'll tell you what it blocked. And that was the one that stood out, was it had, I think there was a priest, and it had blocked one of its abilities. And I was like, oh, okay. Since I played quite a bit of priest, I'm a little more familiar with their abilities. So yeah, other than that, it's not a bad spec. I don't know what they're trying to do. So it's kind of hard when you're playing to kind of get into the fantasy, if you will, when you're not even sure what they're trying to do. When you look at the other specs, you have, Beast Mastery is your kind of your pet spec. It's built around your pet in AoE for the sake of argument. Marksmanship is your single target ability, your sniper ability, if you will. More kind of your single target spec. And then survival, I have no idea. Survival, what it puts me in mind of is a combination of Warlock and Rogue. Basically, Warlock's the only other ability that I know of that has a pet, where half of your abilities are your own and half of them are your pet or your minion in the case of a Warlock. And then as far as like bombs and poisons and everything else, I mean that's a very typical rogue kind of thing. So it wasn't a bad idea to give Hunter a melee class. It's just this isn't it. And I don't know what this is. So I think that's probably why I played with it as long as I did, because I was like, am I missing something? Am I not using something? I mean, it is so ridiculously easy. I had played around with it, I think, at the end of Legion, and it was so overpowered, it was so broken, because they kept trying to tweak stuff. And you could just literally spam dot, spam serpent sting. I think there were like 2 or 3 at that time you could have. And I mean, you never had to come within melee range. You couldn't use Raptor Strike or anything like that. But you could just pretty much spam dots. Again, very much like I think it's Affliction Warlock does. and you really never had to do much else. And now it's pretty much kind of the same way. You do have intimidation, which will stun the target. So I mean, you have a lot of utility. You have a lot of damage abilities as well. You don't have a lot of AoE. It's not a big AoE class. If you pick the right pet for what you're doing, you can get a lot done. I soloed a lot of players in PvP. Even went kind of two versus one at different times, depending on the battleground. I typically got to the point where I was kind of guarding bases and things like that. I wasn't trying to run in and be in the skirmishes as much. A lot of hunters were kind of doing that, just kind of guarding bases because we have camouflage, we could throw out traps, things like that. Kind of got tired of running around on different maps, trying to coordinate what we were doing with some groups. So it was easier just to kind of sit there, guard a base. You're still doing something, but you're not, out there feeling like you're wasting your time because you can't get, market or something. In the maps where you were on the maps that had a flag, where you were either trying to get the flag carrier or stop the flag carrier, I've capped the flag at different times. You do have aspects of the cheetah, so you do have a little bit of movement increase. Didn't work too bad, as long as you had somebody else there helping you. You have just enough utility where you can kind of turn the tables, as it were. Definitely have a lot of survivability, so that part has still held true for hunters. They're intended to be, more of a solo class. More if you want to go questing by yourself or something like that. You don't necessarily need a party. It's not a class that has like a tanking spec or a healing spec or something where it's made to be more in a group or something like that. So I think I did run. I think at some point I did run a dungeon. It was very rare that I did. I've ran them all so much anymore that I was more focused kind of on PvP, or as I said, I did quest a little bit in Mist in a couple zones, and that was kind of it. Or ran around, went to a zone with the intention of questing, and then when I saw how many rares there were, I just kind of ran around while I was in queue and was killing rares. Again, with the experience buff, you can get, at lower levels, you can get quite a bit of experience just running around killing rares. And I mean, it still works perfectly fine for all of that. It's kind of fun out when you see a rare to use Harpoon and kind of pull yourself towards, towards a rare, what have you. Yeah, it's just, it needs something, and I'm not sure what it needs exactly. It needs something that sets it apart from the other abilities and just from what it was before. So it was a bit weird when I originally started playing Hunter, which was years and years ago. And I looked at Survival. There were very few people that ever played Survival for one reason or another. It was always kind of the heavier utility spec, I think might be a fair statement. So if you had a specific purpose for taking it, if you wanted to use a specific ability, Survival was what you went to. And that part might still hold true. It's just they keep changing things, and if you have to switch back over to a spec and feel like you have to relearn it every time, people aren't going to want to play it as much. I remember when Monks came out and they changed, Mistweaver quite a bit, and they changed, I think it was Brewmaster. I mean, they were making changes like every reset day. Not every patch, not every, towards the end of the expansion. I mean, like reset, you'd log in and things would be different. You'd have abilities that were missing, or all your talents were reset because they decided to change things, or something like that. A lot of people still played Brewmaster, as I remember, was really good in Miss because of Stagger. So people still played that. I kind of got discouraged from playing Mistweaver. I leveled completely as a Mistweaver because you had kind of had different stance. So you had a DPS stance and you had a healing stance, and yeah, they weren't called stances. They were called something else. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, they kept making changes, and it was just like I don't want to sit here and relearn this every time I log in. And that's kind of the way this is starting to feel. Like they had went down a road. They had one idea, which was a reasonably fair idea. And then as the way things seemed to go, they went off in a completely different direction, and now it's like they're lost and they don't know where they're going now. So it's basically, I guess in summary, a bunch of random abilities, you could argue, that come together to make survival what it is. As I said, it's not difficult to play. It's just, it's the same kind of talents we've had for a while and the same abilities we've had for a while. And I was like, okay, because I was leveling, I was kind of jumping around for a while, leveling different characters, and I was playing more melee characters, and then I would get on my hunter. And part of the reason why I'd get on my hunter was because I was tired of playing melee. I wanted just to do something more, play a ranged class. And then I kind of got into it, and I was like, well, I've played this character for a while. Let's play this. I'll switch over to survival. It's a melee spec, and it kind of is, kind of isn't. It gives you a weird advantage. I guess you could argue that you're a range spec, but you're not. It's kind of how hunter abilities used to work, where some had to be used kind of within a melee range, some had to be used actually in an actual, ranged. You had to be far enough away in order to use them. I kept asking myself, like, what are they trying to do here? And I could never come up with an answer other than they kind of went so far into it, and then it seems like they've backed off. With baseline abilities becoming talents, it just seems more and more like that, and they seem to be changing the same abilities over and over again. Some of that's probably for balancing, of course. So, yeah. So there is my rambling about Survival Hunter. I could see using it in any context, PvP, raiding, questing. I don't know that it would have a disadvantage in one of those. As I said, they definitely seem to have talents that are leaning more towards one or the other. There were quite a few in PvP. You didn't see hunters harpooning people and getting, being pulled around quite as much as you used to. They were quite broken for a while in PvP. It was almost along the lines of having a rogue. You kind of knew if the other team had a survival hunter, you were kind of like, okay, this is kind of how this is going to go. Yeah. All in all, though, not a bad spec to play. Definitely not a melee spec, though. Kind of a range spec with a few melee abilities, I would say. So, there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope my rambling made some semblance of sense, and thank you for watching.